listening to the Questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the Questionnaires.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The Questionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it up, poke it up, poke it up, poke it up.
You guys, wait up. Because this is the Questionnaire, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I am the Unknown Factor, a.k.a. that Wade Wilson of hip-hop. But, you know, as always, we're getting into comics, right? You know, we started that rotating co-host thing over here in season 2. We'll have Stephen Grant joining us here in just a little while, right? That esteemed gentleman, man. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate Stephen and from, you know, him being the 10th episode and going forward. So I hope he's joining us in a little while. But for our guest today, yeah, we're not going to do no money shots because we're trying to keep the show PG, right? But there will be a little hacking and a little bit of slashing, and we might get local with the man himself, Tim Seeley. How you doing, man?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Good to see you.
Dude, it is a pleasure, Tim. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. I actually think, and was that Wizard World in 1996?
Yeah.
I think I was
still
there,
Wizard World, yeah.
Tim. I think I met you.
It's possible, man. I mean, I was like, oh man, I had a table with a bunch of buddies, two other buddies, and we did a book called Revolt of a Sheep. It was a science fiction book about a post-Civil War United States, and that was where most of the adults were dead and only kids were left. That was the that was the book. Really, really dark shit, honestly. But yeah, we put that out, self-published it, and went to Wizard World that year, and that's like where everybody I met in comics. I met that year. I was sitting next to Art Balthazar and Marshall Dillon, and I met Josh Blaylock, and I met so many people that year. So yeah, crazy.
And I wish Wizard World was still around, in all honesty, because I remember going several years, and it was always a blast, man. It was just funny when I seen that from you, and I was like, I think I was there.
I mean, it diminished quite a bit. Like the height of Wizard World cons in Chicago, at least, it was great when it was Chicago Comic Con, and then Wizard World sort of made it more Hollywood, I guess, and then it sort of started diminishing pretty hard around 2005, 2006, and it just sort of slid all the way to the bottom. And now it's Fan Expo. They bought it. They do a good job. It's just a very different thing than it used to be, you know.
Well, let's get into that, Tim, man, because I mean, I like the state of the comic book industry from 96 to now has obviously changed greatly. I think it's weird, though, if you look at it, because you see that superheroes are obviously more accepted within a mass culture nowadays than I think they were previously. And yeah, with the MCU and everything. But I don't think comic books have that same accord for some reason. You know what I mean?
I think it's actually. I think the public is more accepting of comics than ever.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Webtoon and all the kids books that sell insane, we never sold that in the mainstream comics industry. What they're doing with not Local Man, Dogman. I wish Local Man with Dogman or Raina Telgemeier stuff, or all that world of when I take my kid to the bookstore, there's just racks and racks of comics aimed at kids now, and they're some of them are. There's a few superheroes they'll do like a Miles Morales, or they'll do something like that, but most of them are not, and they do great. And superheroes, I think, are accepted as like film stuff, but superhero comics are just they're toxic, which is, they're like poison to most people. Like most people just will not touch one. They'll read a comic, but they're just like, and it's just the way that we sold them for the past fucking 80 years, but specifically the last 15 is pretty much completely derailed the public having any interest in them, which is crazy, but it's totally true. And like there's no bump really from the movies on any of those comics, but you do an Invincible TV show, you do Walking Dead TV show, you do any of those things, and the comics become huge pop culture sensations. So there's something broken in the way that those things are delivered that makes them inapproachable to most people. It's weird.
And we had a great discussion on this recently over on the PanCon on the Patreon. You can check out with Alan Henry and Dave. And you ever have so many things going on you can't even remember who was all in a moment? You know what I'm saying, Tim? Yeah. See, I I see that you feel that pain, but we had a discussion of the influence on comics and films and how they have on one another. And it is interesting. You make a valid point. Like you see, like obviously the Marvel films and the DC films have not in any way, shape, or form boosted the comic book sales, But
Not
like,
Bruce comics. Yeah, they didn't like. Yeah, there was no rush for Batman comics. I mean, when the new The Batman came out, or when any of those, it's just. But like, I teach college, so I'm with the sort of readership of that stuff, the potential readership of that stuff all the time, and they love comics, and they read them all. They're always reading shit on their phones, but like, I don't know. I've been doing it for 4 years, almost 5 years, and I've had in that time probably 1,000 students, and I've probably had maybe at any given time 2 or 3 superhero readers in that time.
But they all avidly read comics. So it's just, why do you think that is, man? As far as, because I know if you look at the industry, it's evolved a lot. I mean, if you go back to where, like you said, you're talking 96, it was primarily just superheroes. But if you look at the industry now, and I mean, not to say this wasn't true in 96, but it's more prevalent now, as you can literally find any and every kind of story readily available.
Yeah.
Within comics.
Absolutely.
It's like that, man. I mean,
Every genre is represented.
just between you and Tony, you're covering a lot of them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a fact. Why do you think it is people have that stigma about superhero comics? Do you think it has something to do with the fact that they are just more difficult to get into? Because look, I'll tell you, like, I picked up an X Factor book a while ago, a graphic novel, and I love, because I love Deadpool and I love Omega Red. I always have. And I was confused. And this is from someone that, dude, I've read a lot of X-Men in my life. I haven't read it recently, but
I mean, that's certainly part of it. But I think the biggest, the egregious reason for it is that there was always superhero comics from Marvel and DC focused on children. And like the smart 10-year-old is like the golden rule of superhero comics. Like, you make comics for smart 10-year-olds, and so if you're around 7, 8, 9, 10, you can read these books, and you can read them all the way up until you're like 13, 14, 15. And some people stay on, but most would filter onto something else, start picking up Peter Baggy's Hate or something. But that was like the way it was always done. Superhero books were made for that. And if you wanted to read it past that, that was fine. It was on you. But then, like, obviously Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns and stuff, and those were outliers. They were outliers, but they were books read by adults. They were made for adults. But that shit started. They were such big hits, and they were such they were so culturally impactful that towards the end of the 90s, after the sort of image rush and after the big crash of which we had, like, this sort of market manipulations and the collector's boom and all that stuff, when comics sort of started crawling back in late 90s, 97, 98, 99, 2000, there was this real, like, fear that there'd be another bust. And so there was a choice made to make the safe audience. And so around 2000, Marvel DC start making superhero books specifically aimed at older readers, and in fact, to the exclusion of younger readers. They were just not for them. And so there's an entire generation missing. That there's basically, like, from 2000 to like 2015, there was no real superhero books from Marvel and DC for younger readers. And you come about 2015, 2016, DC starts realizing this, and they put out stuff that is accessible, I think, for the current state of kids. Marvel has been doing it they have Disney books, they have all that stuff. They put out books, but now we've lost a generation who does not care about monthly superhero comics. They will read a superhero comic in trade, maybe, but they are completely been kicked off of the system. So now it's 2024, and there's just nothing. There's a gap of missing people that were never here. So you can't, and I think the effort that Marvel and DC have made now to bring people back in works somewhat, but there's a reason, like, the only superhero books that sort of kick up to, 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 is stuff like Spawn, which did kind of stay as a book for its core audience the entire time, right? It didn't It never changed. It was just for that audience. It was, and it's been, represented in video games and stuff like that, and Mortal Kombat, and so it's always in the pop culture zeitgeist. But like, generally speaking, there was just nothing at all. And so we don't have any of those people. Like, I mean, I ask college kids this at the end of every semester, and I just did it last week. I asked my students, what could we have done to get you? And the answer universally is, make something I could read. That's it. And that we didn't do it. And, there was very specific choices made at Marvel and DC not to do it because it was risky and they didn't want another bust. So, and then there's just, if you look at comics from that era, like they're just of no interest to the kids now because they didn't have them. And there is no way to give those to anybody who isn't sort of involved. Like you said, you have to be in the tribe, and they're often about, it's not just that they're sort of so rooted in continuity, because I think that's only part of the problem. The problem is they're about things young kids didn't give a shit about, or they were offensive, or they were like featured things that kids don't want to read, like rape and stuff. so there's this, like, you know what I mean? There's just this like there was this weird choice to chase them out, and then now we're shocked that they're not there.
Can I say to that effect, as far as just to get into a book that you and Tony are currently working on, man, that being this one right here behind me, I love what you've done with it, because look, I was a fan of Image for a long time, but I read this book and I don't think there's, if somebody was like, hey man, I really like superhero movies, I was like, oh well, you want a real interesting superhero story that, like, but it's got so many different levels and it's not something you're expecting, that one is easily, like, you can jump into, right? But at the same time, if you've been a fan of Image for a long time, ooh, what a bunch of little cookie crumbs you guys have just like sprinkled, man. You're like, you're like that one meme, the dude just sprinkling the soul with them little tidbits, man. I'm not even, I mean, just so well. I mean, even in this issue right here where you bring in I almost every female that's been a superhero in Image.
Yeah, I mean, except the ones that we couldn't because Rob doesn't own them. But yeah, I mean, but I guess that's the other side of it, is part of the reason to do Local Man was like, I do all these Image books and they're for new readers and retailers don't buy them. Like I did Hexware, which is like aimed at very squarely at, these like new readers, which I think would come in and buy these books. The kids who grew up on manga and sci-fi and all this sort of stuff, and retailers don't buy them. But I do this book and retailers do, and it's like, well, there you go. There's the proof, right? That, like, that this is kind of who we sell to. But I think the hope for Local Man was that it does sell to like the older comic readers, but it also is completely something that anybody, you don't have to know anything, because we will give you all the information you need. And like you said, we certainly like to put in some Easter eggs, and we like to, and I think for texture, we're just using 90s Image comics as the backdrop. It didn't need to be that, obviously, but because we love it so much, and the book is really about that it benefits from that association. But it's not, it isn't continuity heavy, because there is no continuity to those old Image books at all, really, and except for Savage Dragon, obviously, and Spawn. But so this allows us to kind of get our cake and eat it too. And in my most cynical moments, it's sort of like, it just reaffirms a lot of things that I thought, unfortunately, was that, there is no way to get this stuff to people who might be interested in it. So you have to sort of rely on potential readers who exist, who are here, and then hope that it trickles out to those other potential readers that might be interested in it.
Well, can I say, I hope people checking out the show are definitely getting in and looking at the books, because I know everybody we've had on they've got phenomenal books. I mean, like I said, we've got Tony coming up here in a little while, and we're going to get into Local Man with him as well as everything else he's working on. But what I want to know, and when you and Tony are sitting there working this out, how the conversations start to where you came up with that, and a guy, and then I wonder, like with Crossjack, where exactly are you taking his powers? Because it's like he never misses, but then you play off that little bit of like, oh well, maybe the power is more than that, you know.
Yeah.
And do you guys have a plan as far as how long you intend to run this, or are you just like, we're gonna run it until we can't run it no more?
I mean, it's both. I guess the way we approach it is that every 5 issues, essentially, 4 issues plus like a special, has like an absolute plan. And so, we knew the absolute plan of the first arc, and then we knew the absolute plan of the second arc, and then now we know the absolute plan of the third arc, and we can also have a fourth arc. But I guess I've learned my lesson from doing these kind of ongoing Image books is like, have a satisfying ending always in place, but always have lots of directions you can go. I mean, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear this. You come from a hip hop background. Comics is like improv. It's like a rap battle. Like, part of the thing that when you come up with something, you have to have a framework and you have to know where you're going. But everything you do within that is sort of like it's a call out response. Like, it part of the way that you do this is that you roll with what you have, and every choice means that you have to make a reaction to the last choice. And so, because you just have to constantly be able to turn on a dime, you don't know what will work, you don't know what won't, what character will inspire you, what character will sort of reach their own ending. So, with this, we had an absolute plan for what it was going to be, but we just let it kind of trickle around, and because it's 2 guys working together, both writers, both artists, we can sort of come up with ideas, talk it through, make decisions on the page, react to the decisions on the page in a way that it's not sort of available to, here's the writer wrote a script, artist did some art, and that's much more locked in place. This is like, it's a lot more like improv or cooking, or it's you're sort of reacting to what's in front of you. And I think the thing that makes Tony and I work together well is our ability to sort of play off each other's strengths and weaknesses. And so, I'm a big structure guy, and I'm a big sort of dialogue guy, and Tony's a really good vibe guy, and he also just knows how to make things lean. So like, I come up with a bunch of shit and we talk about it, and then I write a thing that's too much, and Tony comes in and pairs it back, and then I react only on what he paired back to, and then we get our next thing. So it ends up making something, sort of lean and direction. It's very direction heavy, I think, because of that, because it's sort of paired back to just the most important parts.
And I mean, you guys have done a phenomenal job in that, man. It's interesting to hear how you two work together. I'm curious, within this, like, you got any one shots planned? Because I know you dropped Local Man Gold not that long ago, which was excellent. But like, you got any thoughts about as far as taking some of the other characters you've built for this universe and maybe doing something in that regard?
I mean, yeah, we would love to, and we set up a lot of stuff. So this arc, there's another one shot that comes after this one, and that I think really sets shit up. Like, the way that we have it planned, and how it ties into the stuff. Yeah, there's always directions, and all the characters, most of them are ones I made up as a kid, or Tony made up as a kid. So we've been thinking about them for a long time, and so Neon's origin, I came up with probably when I was like a version of it anyway, when I was like 13 or 14 or something, and obviously I modified it and for now, but so there's all these characters are mostly there because they're ones that we made up and we've thought about, and so they can be integrated into this universe, the Image universe, pretty easily. And then, like for Gold, for instance, we're riffing on something. Bad Girls, we're riffing on something. And
Hey, look, real quick. I guess my boy knew that it was Tim Seeley in the house, and he had to come say hi. So for the first time in the questionnaire, here's my boy on the show with Tim Seeley. But yeah. Say he writes cool books. You'll read them one day when you're old enough. You're a little young for most of Tim's work now. Let's go wash our hands. All right, go wash your hands, buddy. I love you.
My kid does the walk-in every once in a while. So yes, definitely.
Sorry, he's
No worries.
This is why I do it after the boy goes to bed.
I know. Sorry, I'm yeah. I have the opposite problem. I have to be up, night to do a podcast is tough because I have to put my kid to sleep and read her book and do all the shit. So yeah, so the morning is much better for me.
I get it, man. Next time you come on, Tim, we're gonna plan this for a little bit earlier if possible. I'm gonna have you awake at 7 a.m. How about that? Like, I hate.
Oh, I'm up.
Okay, good. Well, I hate time zones, man. That way Steven won't be late either. You know what I mean? I swear. I just need to get used to time zones at this point. It's not like I don't deal with people all over the freaking planet doing this show. What do you think the impact that's had on comics as far as the fact of you can communicate with anyone now, man. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I mean, it's not like you have to be in any capacity in the same room to have any kind of conversation or pitch.
I mean, it's so we wouldn't have been able to make Local Man Gold or Bad Girls, maybe even 10 years ago, because the way we did it was using FTPs and then also using Procreate files. So the original, there's no original art. We weren't sending something across the country and drawing over boards. We just FTP'd Procreate files, and then I would do a layout, or Tony would do a layout, and then we would each draw our part, and then pass it back and forth, and we could work on them like within minutes. Like I could draw something, say, hey Tony, can you please draw this on there, and then he would do it. Like it is literally a thing we couldn't have done, probably. I mean, maybe 5 years ago if we were pretty ahead of the game, but definitely not 10. So yeah, it makes a huge impact. I think the rise of the availability of Clip Studio or Procreate for digital art. It doesn't massively increase your your productiveness. I think you still got to draw, right? It's still, but it's great. I love using it. It obviously makes it so there's no original art. So sometimes people ask me for a cover, and I'm like, oh, I drew that on my iPad, in a hotel room over Thanksgiving, so that kind of sucks. But that availability is massively game changing. I don't think it's made,
My boy wants to make more appearances than ever, Tim, on the show. Like, I swear. Hey, buddy, Daddy's gonna talk to Tim, and I mean you were gonna go to the park, okay? So you go chill with mommy, and we'll go feed the birds later. We're gonna go feed the birds, man. You gotta feed the birds sometimes. That's why I love with what you're doing. You are feeding great tidbits of people out there that are reading comics, and I mean you're making so much out there. Like I said, I love your work, Tim. I wouldn't read it to my 4-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
I wouldn't read stuff to my 4-year-old either. I'm actually working on a book purposely to finally have something to share with my kid, because I do so much adult stuff. But it's announced already. It's a book through Simon & Schuster. It's like a YA book. It's just so much to draw. It's so many pages because YA books are so many pages. But yeah, so I was thinking the same thing. I just don't have, I can't pass my stuff easily to my daughter. She knows who Cassie is because of action figures and covers, and the one character that she loves that I have is Love Bunny, who appears in Bad Girls, and so she reads that comic because it's like the most kid-friendly thing I've done. Yeah.
How do you go about balancing that, man? Especially with the conversation we've had as far as bringing in new readers, to know that you're putting out content that is something that would be available to all readers. You know what I mean? And how do you balance that, especially knowing, I mean, with what you've done, a lot of what you've done is, more adult. Clearly, if anybody knows Tim's work, I hope you do. If you don't, go look it up. Oh my God, please. But how do you do that when you're going to approach this YA novel, or book? How did you go into that and make sure that part of your writing didn't seep in to where it was like, oh, I shouldn't have?
Well, I mean, it's actually it's like a weird opposite, because when I started in comics, you kind of had, when I started, I was doing, G.I. Joe and stuff, drawing wise, and that was a wider audience kind of thing. But the stuff I think I'm known for was like stuff like Hack Slash, which horror tends to be more obviously oriented towards adults, not necessarily always, but specifically Hack Slash was because it was a slasher story and stuff. So, and I think because of that, I've generally just been hired for stuff of that age group. You know, and I guess that's sort of also where most I think of. I mean, I could give Hack Slash to a smart 13-year-old. We'd be fine, right?
Okay.
Or a, you know, and I think it fits well within like a 15, 16-year-old. They read it, and I know that it's fine. Revival, I think the same thing. But yeah, like for this book that I'm working on, I got hired because of Hack Slash, but the stuff, and I'm drawing it, not writing it. But the author, I think one of the things that she and her husband were thinking about when they wrote it was, how do we do like Evil Dead, Hack Slash, all that stuff for like a smart 12-year-old, like, you know, like, and that's like, it's like a smart 11-year-old girl, like, let's, because girls love horror, and that's kind of what this is aimed at. And so, you know, that's why I'm doing it, because I was like, that's what I want. I want to bring that kind of stuff to, you know, that audience, because I know they exist. I see them all the time. And my college kids that you know, a lot of them are big horror fans, so I know, you know, that stuff was always something they were interested in, especially slasher stuff. Man, you know, teenagers have always loved that shit, but like, it's coming back around. You know, probably for the same reasons it was popular in the 80s, because culture had a big, you know, backlash against sex and everything. And so, of course, that's where they socially, same in the 80s, you know, the Satanic Panic. It's like nothing makes slasher movies more popular than cultural backlash to, to teen sex stuff. So, you know, so I think this is part of the reason I took the book, and it, you know, it is definitely an all ages book, but you know, it's like all the things I love with a publisher that can find easily those smart 11, 12, 13-year-old girls, you know.
What do you think about that, man, when you look at the market? Because I know a lot of creators within the comic book market, they pretty much have to rely on self-promotion. You know? Like there's a lot of creators when it's a book, you better be promoting it if you want it to sell. You know what I mean? Especially with the Kickstarter and all of this. You've got so many books coming out that are entirely independent. And then
Yeah.
you've obviously got the bigger companies that promote what they want to sell, but that's in specifically like they will promote specifically what they're trying to sell the most more than anything else. You know what I mean? They know, like, there are some books that they'll drop and they won't get much promotion, and
Oh
typically
yeah,
for that
yeah,
they'll fall
be
to the
horrible.
wayside. What's your opinion on the promotion aspect of this, man? And what would be your advice to someone that was trying to get into comics to make it to where they can push their book as much as possible, or podcast for that matter, Tim?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the worst part of all this is that, you know, the individual is sort of the best person to talk about their project, and these companies know it, and it has caused them to make the authors and the artists to be the marketing team for these books, which we should not be. That is not my job. But increasingly, every time I do something, whether it's for a major publisher or myself, it's on me to sell it. Which that should be a marketing person, that should be an ad person, a salesperson, but all those people are gone, and generally speaking, and so now they rely on us even harder. Like, you know, hey, you want more work? Push this book, go sell it, go shout it on social media, have a bigger platform. And then the downside of that is it causes rewards for bad behavior, because if you want to get attention, being good is not necessarily the point. You just need attention, right? So you have like these sort of, you know, movements based on being an asshole, which are rewarded because they get attention. And so like it's a bad thing, and that I think is really negative, and you see the negative effects of it because it puts people in a position of being very public, which is not good for them, you know. And so it's bad. They should not be doing that. And when it's your creator-owned book, yes, obviously, like companies like Vault have a really good sales team. They really know how to sell books to retailers. They know how to sell books to book market, which is great. Dark Horse has a pretty good crew. You know, obviously Image is a creator-owned book company, so they don't have as much, but they have something. And my shock is always that all these small publishers tend to have more dedicated salespeople, marketing people, than big companies, which is just, it's crazy. So, and I see kind of just less and less put into that stuff. The stuff that I see work the best, and advice for publishers, free. Have someone on your staff, your marketing staff, and your sales staff, who has a really good rapport and relationship with retailers. Hopefully, it's someone who maybe was a comic book retailer, has that connection. Image has someone like that now. Vault has somebody like that, and you need somebody to speak the language and to contact retailers and to address their concerns, and then be the connection between the comic shop and the creators that are making these books. So, my job is to make books. It's not to be a marketing team. But I will certainly answer questions. You can call me. I would love to help you sell a book. I'm just not doing that for a full-time job. And so, the ones that do that, I see that work pretty well. And the something Tony will probably be able to talk to you about is he hired a guy who's a retailer and who is sort of working on this way of selling books to retailers, and it works. I mean, Farrell sold great. So, that is what we need to do, is be more connected to the retailers, answer their questions, tell them why they want to buy this book, like be their friend, because we're in this together. But it just has to be somebody whose job is to do that, not fucking my job.
Hey, as far as Farrell, when Tony comes, we are definitely, because Tony will be coming up here in the near future, we're definitely going to be digging in with Tony about Farrell. I'm very, I swear, from Stray Dogs to that, I got to pick that man's mind, but we'll get into that later, man. But I think that's,
he's smart. He knows how to sell shit. Tony knows how to sell shit, and he knows, maybe some of the stuff we did for Local Man, we should have done more, because the lessons learned on Local Man, Tony was able to apply that to selling Farrell and did a great job on it, or, Uncanny Valley or something. So, there's always lessons to be learned with this creator-owned stuff, but you really hope that the publishers would put more of their effort into it and not rely on us so much.
What do you think, how do you think you could change that to where they realize? Because I feel like, is it just a sheer fact that they don't want to spend the money on a marketing person? And do they not realize that in spending the money on the marketing person, that if you hire the right marketing person, it should fully recoup his salary plus some, because it should increase all the sales of the books?
I think it's just tough now in general, because, print comics still work and still sell, and that's kind of amazing, but print everything else is gone. So there's no Wizard magazine, or there's no place to do advertising and tell people something exists in the world of which traditionally it's been done. And so now you have this sort of, the only thing that exists is social media. And here's the problem with social media, is everyone is shouting at the same time, and it's all just a big wall of sound, and nothing, I think, is getting through, just these rare little moments. So because they don't know how to deal with it, because I guess really very few people do, then the only thing they know how to do is go, well, you've got more followers here than we do, so I'm going to need you to do this for us. They can't take over my fucking Twitter and sell a book, which they should, but that, I think, is the cause. And you see it the lack of a sort of central, comics website, or there really isn't that anymore. It used to be CBR and Newsarama, and those are both, because of the enshittification of the internet, both of those are sort of limping along as, doing the best they can, but mostly they sell clickbait and, BuzzFeed kind of terrible kind of versions of articles. So
this is why this show will never blow up like that thing, because I don't have time to make clickbait, Tim. I just try to.
And there's a place, there's always a place for the sort of the Larry King sort of let's sit down and have a conversation about something. There's always room for that, but it's not. You have to seek it out. It's not like this, the way that the internet has incentivized that kind of in-depth engagement. It doesn't exist, right? I mean, it's always about this fast, sugar hit. There was some god-awful article the other day on BuzzFeed. It was like, I'm a total idiot, but I really think I figured out this. It's just like these god awful headlines that just make you go, why are you an idiot? Like, it's not even about the thing, the fucking article. It's awful shit, but it's incentivized, right? That's the only thing that's getting these consistent fast hits. So all of the sales of, you know, or all of the attention that they're trying to shine on books has got to now come through that version of marketing, right? So yeah, it's, you know, if someone could figure out the way to do like a and they just haven't, like some kind of platform that doesn't need to make money the way Newsarama does, or the way you know, Comic Book Resources does now.
You got me yet?
Over there, there's Mr. Stephen Grant.
Stephen Grant.
Can you hear
in
me?
the house? Yeah, all good, Stephen. We're just talking about the comic book industry and marketing and how terrible it's become, and the internet and clickbait, and how it should make your head hurt if you're out there, you know.
Yes, and I know Stephen's like one of those people who figured out how to have a voice in very distinctly on a place like Twitter, which I think, you know, is a benefit but also a bane, because now if you're up doing a book, Stephen, they're going to say, well, hey, I'm going to need you to go talk about this, tweet about this, and do this for us, right? Like, because you're good at it, you know, which is,
You'll have to excuse me a moment. I can't get any volume out of this.
oh no, we've just been yammering at poor Stephen.
So let me check this here.
Stephen can't hear us. Drat.
I can hear you. I can't hear you well.
Hey, that's funny, because I was having the same issue when we initially clicked on it, and I had to click a couple buttons. But look, if you're doing something like this and you don't run across tech issues, that's bloody well amazing. So I'm curious, Tim, in that, man, I mean, because obviously technology has been ingrained in comics way more. You ever have tech issues that just really, really caused a delay in a project?
Yes, all the time. I mean, you know, that's the downside. I guess the old version of, you know, would be you spill your ink on your page or something. But,
Okay.
you know, I've certainly had corrupted files that I had to redraw, or I accidentally flattened. It's just, it's hilarious the dumb shit you can do when you're producing pages like in third grade.
Okay.
You know, but, you know, it's not like those versions of things didn't exist before, or, you know, the dread of like sending a page through FedEx and having it get lost. So there's versions of that shit that happened in the old analog days, but yeah, holy crap, I've definitely had some shit, or you know, the wrong resolution files and then scrambling to fix them. Yeah, it's terrifying to like. I've learned so many lessons about backing all my shit up, and the real help of teaching at a college, because I've seen college kids do everything wrong, you know, like draw an entire project and have it be like 72 DPI, or you know, just like all the sort of things that could go wrong. Thank God I have this fresh batch of people to make the mistake, and then I can just, you know, give them understanding grade on it. But so yeah, it's a good reminder. Digital doesn't make things less likely to be fucked up. It just doesn't. You know, it's just different fuck ups.
And I mean, I think that's interesting, man. I know over here we've had a couple tech issues where I had to like refilm an episode or this or that, or it's slightly mind numbing. But I can only imagine, like, if you've got a full page drawn out and then and you lose that full page, like, it's like, you feel like you've ever lost something and then you weren't able to recreate it.
I mean, the worst thing is no. I mean, it's also a lesson. One of the worst things is sometimes you'll draw something, you think it's great, and then you lose it, and then you redraw it, and you're like, "Fuck, it is better." And then you wonder, what if I redrew everything? What if, right? It's like an existential terror, because, you know.
Okay.
Then once you redraw everything, if that's your thought, Tim, then you never get to release anything.
Yeah, right, exactly. I took that lesson from very early on, which was a Jack Kirby quote I'd read, which was, "They pay me to draw and not to erase." And I think about that all the time. And you know, Jack made tons and tons of stuff, and it wasn't all perfect, but it was always interesting. And you know, you have to get yourself to a point where you say, "Well, I'm good enough that my good enough is gonna work," you know, and that every once in a while you rise above and you nail it, and every once in a while you dip a little bit below. but I kind of rely on this. I've never turned in a script I wasn't at least happy with. I've turned in a few that I was like, I wish I had a little more time, or I wish, I'm going to go back into this, but at the end of the day, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never turned in anything that I was like, well, that absolutely sucks. I've never done it. So I think that's, knock on wood. Holy shit, knock on wood. But I maintain that, I'm good enough at this and I'm trained enough that I will do something, and it will be decent, at least.
Was curious, real quick. Give me a quick pause. Steven, you hear us?
Yeah, I seem to have a channel out, so I'm just gonna have to listen carefully. So,
I know.
so,
We're both loud as shit, so you should be okay.
so, but go ahead.
There we go. I have this. I wanted to chat about it.
Wow.
Wait, what? I didn't see that.
It's the Dark Horse version. It's really nice. It's got a new Tim Bradstreet cover. So I picked that one up. My favorite Stephen Grant work is this one, and I'm a guy who has all your Wildcats shit and all your Image stuff you did, and Vampirella Wetworks. I have all that stuff too. Of course, I love that stuff. But Badlands is my favorite of your stuff.
Well, Badland tends to be my favorite too. I mean, there's a couple things that challenge it, but overall, it's my favorite.
Yeah, it's a goodie. It's a goodie. It's way ahead of its time, I think, which is the most interesting thing about it. Is that you did this book before Sin City and before, people were bringing in those sort of noir sensibilities, and it's so nihilistic.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever thought of it as nihilistic or not. It's just,
It's nihilistic. But in a good way. I mean, because it's about how this, that sort of feeling that no matter what you do, you're fucked, which is the
well, yeah.
That's the noir.
That was kind of my attitude toward things then.
Well, that's interesting. So would you write something that, and again, if you don't think it's nihilistic, but would you write something this nihilistic now as a...
Oh, sure. Do you ever see Damned?
Yeah, I read Damned. It's pretty...
Yeah, Damned is more nihilistic than that is, as far as I'm concerned. And that at least ends on a note of some hope.
Well, I think what's interesting about Badlands, though, is because it's come back around to being, it was, relevant when you wrote it, and then it's relevant in a different way now because of the conspiracy stuff.
Right.
So much of everything is sort of run that way, and just the way that it's partially about, like, at some point you can be powerful and rich enough that nothing can punish you, right? Which is sort of obviously the vibe of today, right now, this very moment.
Well, yeah, but that's in there, but also you can never be rich and powerful enough that you can't fuck up.
Also true. Good point. That's
kind of an underlying theme of the thing. I mean, I didn't phrase it this way, but someone along the line phrased it as history is made by the losers.
That's true, yeah.
And that's kind of the theme of Badlands. History is made by the losers.
Huh. So it's not
because it's what goes when he goes off script is what screws everything up for them.
Yeah. So it's written by the winners but made by the losers. That's
right. Yeah.
I like that.
That's
great.
A twist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I reread this because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I just was, I was kind of marveling at like how the 80s neo-noir movies or sort of the early 90s ones, like one of my big influences on Local Man was trying to do something. There's a writer named John Dahl.
I love John Dahl. John Dahl's one of my big faves. Yeah. Red Rock West. Yeah. What was the Linda Fiorentino thing?
Kill Me Again. Not Kill Me Again. The Last Seduction.
The Last Seduction. That's Kill Me Again was Kenneth Branagh. Was Kill Me Again?
No. Val Kilmer and his wife.
Right. I can't remember. Did he direct Kill Me Again?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. There's some Kenneth Branagh film that's got roughly the same name that it's,
Oh yeah.
I have to sort them out, but
Well, I was because when Tony and I were doing Logan Man, it's like I kept pushing like I've never seen this sort of approach, this kind of like quiet, lazy noir that has bursts of fierce violence. Like I haven't seen that sort of applied to, a superhero comic, I guess. And I was reading this, I was like, oh, you were doing that shit in 1989. Like that was right. Like, and that's before Red Rock West and Kill Me Again and Last Seduction.
yeah, but Walter Hill got there before I did.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So
But it was a treat to like reread this. Go, oh yeah, like the things I liked about this were the same things I liked about those John Dahl films. And John Dahl also being a guy who did this awesome shit, but like doesn't now he directs like episodes of Walking Dead or something. Like he should.
Actually, he just directed a couple episodes of Manhunt. I was very thrilled to see that.
Oh really? Well, see,
Yeah.
it's still working, but like I feel like he's such a distinctive voice. He should have gotten 10 more films. Like
Well, yeah, but he was kind of so distinctive, but he wasn't in sync with the time in Hollywood.
Yeah, and maybe ahead of the time, which I also would say is Badlands, right? That's also that's the you were too ahead of the time. You're a little bit out of sync, and like now I think people go, oh holy shit, this thing was fucking doing stuff way before other people were, So I hope it gets, as it always should, the mention. I try to make sure I mention it, like what a distinctive and important influence it is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
I throw some shit at Steven because I'm a big fan.
Oh no, man, I completely understand. Look, the fact that Steven was the 10th episode on the questionnaire and everything has gone forward how it has with Steve, it still blows my mind because I was reading Steven's comics when I was like young, some of the stuff he put out for Marvel and this and that. And now here I am sitting here talking to two guys, chatting it up, talking their work that, I've read extensive amounts of your work. When I was way too young not too young to be writing comics, but too young to definitely be considered serious by a publisher. Like, I don't think any publisher is going to look at a 15-year-old sincerely,
There's always Jim Shooter.
There's always Shooter. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's always a great example.
Yeah, there's always that rarity. But typically, if you walk up to a publisher as a 15-year-old kid, most of those people they're going to be like, okay, kid, and take your book and walk away, and then they probably never read it.
I think some might start worrying about child labor laws in this day and age.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah.
Hey, look, if we're going to get into child labor laws in the entertainment industry, like, come on, let's. I don't think.
Oh no, believe me, there are child entertainment laws in the entertainment industry.
I don't think they're strict enough. Is my whole point, man. Has anybody watched Quiet on the Set? I didn't watch Quiet on the Set, but the wife did, and I caught parts of it, and yeah, I think those children would have all been way safer working in comics. Is all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, well, no, that's true, but
yeah, for sure.
But I just think it's probably areas that most publishers wouldn't want to bother having to waste time with,
Yeah.
You have to take them into consideration regardless. So it's not like you get a 20-year-old in there you can just screw over right and left with impunity. So
yeah, right, exactly. The entire basis of the industry really is screwing over.
Well, I mean, if you go back far enough, it's a little less that way now. I mean, it's most people don't go out of their way to screw you. Most people. Well, the big publishers are pretty set up in terms of how they deal with things. So, you should know what you're getting into when you go with them. The smaller publishers, every one of them has the best of intentions until they run out of money. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't we all, Stephen? Don't we all? And until that bank account gets real low, and it's like, hold on, I got to go do something real heinous because I'll be right. Yeah, which I think is unfortunate. Do you think how much of the industry, man, as far as everything going independent, do you think was just caused by those main two? And do you think there's something that Marvel and DC could have done that would have made it to where perhaps Image never formed. Not that I'm saying that would have been a terrible thing. Let me clarify. I would have been a bad thing in my opinion for the industry as a whole. But do you think there's something that those two companies could have done to prevent that?
Well, it's interesting. Because you own Badlands to a degree, right? So Dark Horse was always doing somewhat creator-owned. It goes back to Pacific, I think, Comico. All of them have
Eclipse, pretty much. Eclipse was really the first one. I mean, various companies, little companies had popped up. I mean, Star Reach was there before everybody, you know.
It was always a version of it that existed. But I think, I mean, specifically for the Image stuff, there was definitely nothing those guys could do because they tried it. And
sure. Well, I would tell you what they could have done. They could have killed the direct market.
Sure. Yeah, or that. Yeah.
Because the direct market's what made it all possible. I mean, the newsstand, you know, you go newsstand, you end up with His Name is Savage, you know, and when they did kill His Name is Savage. So. Yeah.
And there was just, yeah, that's interesting. And I think just part of it sort of was always going to be, you know, the specific guys that started Image were doing it because of the platform they had, that they were able to sort of do this completely elevated, as far as retailers were concerned, thing, you know, and it had to be about it had to be a bit about the big break. It had to be. That was like part of the punk rock image they were going for, you know, name intended, I guess. But it's always existed and it's always been important. But I always think, you know, Dark Horse had such a good run and sort of I love what Dark Horse was doing, like in the mid, you know, when they first started, they could have really, I wish Dark Horse was still as sort of badass and punk rock, and they deserve more than they got, I think.
But you know, I think something that's really put a dent in Dark Horse recently is the fact that, you know, Disney bought Fox, which that took a lot away from them, unfortunately, as far as titles that they could put out that they knew would sell.
Yeah, I mean, and they were the ones that innovated, you know, the sort of picking the right licensable title, picking Aliens and knowing that there was this intense possible fan base, picking Predator. You know, that's Mike Richardson was way ahead of the game of figuring out that stuff had value, that adult R-rated films could be made into like quality fan driven comics. Like that was a huge innovation that he made. Obviously there was licensed comics before that, but not the success that those, you know, long running Aliens and Predator.
Well, I'll tell you what they did that Marvel and DC didn't do is that traditionally, I mean, those things have always been done. You go back to the 40s, there's like movie comic, you know, literally a movie comics that adapts a different movie every issue. But, you know, they're basically throwaway junk.
Yes.
You know, the way that Marvel handled it, you bring in, I mean, Marvel and DC have their core books, and that's where they make most of their money off of, and that's where they make their effort. You know, and that's where they put their effort. So you don't bring in your top people in general. You might bring in, like, you know, Gene Colan to draw it because Gene could draw fast. You know, you bring in people who are fast and people who aren't going to upend your regular books if you use them, if you switch them to that. You know, you generally don't bring in Roy Thomas to write, you know, to do an adaptation of something when Roy is writing 6 of your top books. You know, you bring in the guy on the bottom who you throw stuff to when it's open. And I know because I was this guy. I never did any movie adaptations for them, but I did other things for them as this guy. And so what Dark Horse did is they came in, you know, they brought the stuff in and they said, okay, well, we're going to put thought behind this and we're going to use the best guys we've got.
Yeah.
And we're going to use it to get a lot of attention, you know, we're going to get a lot of attention. And that's what they did right.
Agreed.
You know?
Yep, absolutely.
And yeah,
basically they approached everything like Marvel approached Conan. originally.
And look,
Yeah.
well,
One
Steven,
adaptation
you
that we
didn't
care
write any
about.
movie adaptations. You did write a comic that got adapted into a movie. And what I want to know, Tim, like how many people have came at you trying to do a hack slash something? Because I feel like it's happened. Because I have literally, dude, I seen it on IMDb at one point, or maybe it was Wikipedia, or maybe it was IMDb. I'm not sure. Where they were trying to do an animated hack slash.
I mean, it's a nightmare story. I'm sure. Well, Steven's had Nightmare Hollywood Stories adaptations. I have one like that. It's just, you know, I sold the rights to when I was young, which was great because I got money and I was 28 and I could definitely use that money when I was 28. But then that means it's locked up with a company and they've just never been able to make it work. And they don't let anybody do anything with it, and it's So that's basically been the last 15 years of my life. But I didn't get into the biz to make movies, I guess. So well, congrats, I won. I didn't really. I haven't made it. I guess I made a movie, but but not of hack slash. So, but Steven's been through that with Badlands too. I mean, your screenplay for it is awesome, but it's just always getting. Hollywood, the game is not to make. It's not really to make movies, really. Like it's just, they make movies on accident, and then occasionally they benefit from it. But from what I've seen, it's just kind of horrifying,
Well, and I just think it's funny, man, because I feel like hack slash is something that could be made into a movie so quickly. I mean, you've even had so
Yeah.
many movie characters come from the movie world and go into hack slash. I mean, I can't even name how many characters that have been in hack slash that originated in the film, but it's been quite a few,
Yeah, that's easy. I can do that. I can get that happen. And this is also here's the reason for that. Horror films are generally cheaper to make, so they don't often require a studio. And so
Oh my
one
gosh!
of the
Look,
that horror films tend to have is that a lot of them are owned by the people who made them. So for a long time, Jason Voorhees was owned by Steve. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the guy that directed the film, and that was also the case of Michael Myers, and it was the case of a lot of these things. They weren't owned by like Warner Brothers and stuff. So like, when we did a Chucky crossover, Don Mancini, though he created the character for Universal, kind of like effectively owns the character. He's still directing and writing the TV show. So horror characters are great because you can work with the people who made them instead of a mega corporation. Which, lesson learned. I should have kept the rights to hack slash and done it myself. But there you go. I was like, I don't make movies, so that was my punishment from on high.
you sold the rights. Look, my boy finds it funny, and he's goofy. But that's terrible, dude. You get in situations where you do have to do that. Hey, sir. Look, my boy is so Tim. I don't know if you've noticed, but my boy so wants to get in on your interview, dude.
Hey,
he's about it. You're about it, aren't you? You're
right,
about
man.
it.
Hey, you deserve some podcast time of your own.
So yeah. I'm gonna have to get that book you're working on. This actually would it be appropriate for someone this young, Tim?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yes.
All right, good. We're gonna have to. You see him? We're gonna have to read something he's got coming out here pretty soon. What do you think? But right now, go watch something or go play some video games. Daddy will be done just here in a second. We'll go feed the birds. We gotta go feed the birds.
No.
No? Oh my gosh. My boy is being real resilient.
Hey, it was absolute pleasure talking to you guys. You got to take care of your kiddo. I got some
Let daddy do his outro. Let daddy do his outro. Go get mommy real quick and let daddy do his outro, right? Because Tim, it has been a pleasure, man. I guarantee. Look, next time you come on the show, I'm gonna make sure this one is at school.
No worries.
That's my plan. That way he's not trying to run up in the interview, though he is awesome. And he has the best name ever because he's named after 3 superheroes.
Bye-bye.
Right? You cannot end the call. He's trying to end the call now. right? So Daddy's going to go ahead and end the show, right?
Well, let me
Again,
also recommend this book by that guy Stephen
Thank you.
Anator. This is a great.
Yeah, hey,
If you
go
like
go
local
give Daddy 30 seconds and we'll go to the park and feed the geese, man. Right? Tim, again, it was a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. Everybody out there, check the link in the description. You can get all kind of into Tim's work, man. We got Tony coming up. We'll be getting more into local man as well as a couple other things. We got Steven coming up, co-hosting some more episodes. It's gonna be phenomenal. Tim, you didn't answer the questions to where I can really muck with you like I like to at the end of the show, man, right? So I will just say, if you enjoyed this interview with Tim Seeley, right, what I want you to do is go check out all his work. If you haven't enjoyed it, I don't know, man. Why didn't you turn it off before I got to this point would be my main point, right? Like, seriously, you had like a whole hour to be like, I'm done. I don't want to listen to the end. But if you did, just 3 more things I want you to do, right? 1, give it that thumbs up. 2, get your comic on. 3, have a good night, y'all.
All right, thanks,
This
man.
has been the questionnaire.
Where's the link?
Thanks for checking out the questionnaire.
In the link below, yes?
I will drop it like it's hot.
That's another party.
It's cool, man. I love it.
The questionnaire. That is all.